Hello, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Welcome to Gospel Minded, where we spend a few minutes each week talking about psychology, our emotions, behavioral health, and we reflect on how these important topics are related to the Sunday Gospel reading for each week. I want to point out, like always, that this isn't a substitute for actually going to church or participating in counseling, therapy, spiritual direction, if you are involved in those sort of practices. But like we know so well, things of our psychology, things of our mind, so often go hand in hand with our spirituality as well. And so if you're a regular viewer of this show, I appreciate your support. I ask you to subscribe to this channel so you never miss an update of Gospel Minded. Now, today's Gospel reading comes from the Gospel of John. If you remember, throughout ordinary time, we'd been reading through the book of Mark, but then last week there's this transition to John's 6th chapter, and today we are continuing in the 6th chapter of John. It starts with verse 24, and I want to read just a few lines to set up where I want to go with our conversation for today. It says this: "When they found Jesus on the other side of the sea, they said to him, 'Rabbi, when did you come here?' Jesus answered them, 'Truly, I say to you, you seek me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him has God the Father set his seal.'" I want to stop it right there because, wow, what a rich and profound text this is from John's Gospel. Jesus is saying, do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life. You know, it reminds me of that text from the prophet Isaiah. Why spend your money for what fails to satisfy? I think Jesus is picking up on that theme. Don't go for the bread that perishes. Seek that which is going to bring you to eternal life. Now, again, for Catholics, this 6th chapter of John is important because that's where a lot of our Eucharistic theology comes from. But I think in a psychological sense, there's an important lesson in this gospel today and something very important to think about. Jesus is speaking about going after the bread which can bring us to eternal life. But this idea of what are we striving for? What are you putting most of your energy towards day to day? Is it something that is perishing and fleeting? Or is it something that's really leaving you feeling like you're full of life, like you are living your best life? And is it something that is gearing you up for and leading you towards eternal life? You know, I've been thinking about this a little bit at work. The topic comes up a lot about work-life balance. And I think for a lot of us in our country and in our culture, we spend as much time or more at work than we do at home with our families. We probably certainly spend more time at work doing work-related activities than we do doing leisurely activities or hobbies, things that we enjoy doing in a way that's different than our work. So I want to say just a quick thing about work. It's very important that we do actively engage in our role or our occupation or our job or our studies or whatever. You know, we can experience a share in the divine life by expending ourselves in a virtuous way with our jobs, with our studies, with our responsibilities, whatever they may be. And we want to really put our best foot forward in those environments because that's part of what the virtuous man looks like. Somebody who can be competent and do their job well, especially if it's a job for the service of others. And at the same time, we want to be conscientious to manage that work-life balance, because if we are expending ourselves fully at our jobs, doing whatever we can to try and grow and develop and expand, chances are we're going to experience symptoms of burnout. And then what might happen on the other end when we come home, say, is that our relationships there might be taxed. We perhaps don't have the time to engage in self-care the way that we would like or the way that we ought. And then what kind of effects does that have on us? Usually not the best. But here we have to stop and ask this question. Are we striving for the thing that perishes, or are we putting more of our time and energy towards that which is going to bring us towards eternal life? And I think it can be a real delicate sort of juggling act when we talk about what we're doing in the world. For a lot of us, it's trying to provide for our families and our loved ones. A lot of us are trying to develop our careers and expand and grow. Who wouldn't want to make more money? Who wouldn't want to get that promotion? Who doesn't want to get that pat on the back? If you're a student, who doesn't want to press on farther to try and get that A, to make the dean's list? Whatever it is, it's all important to try and do our very best with that, absolutely. But it is perishing. We can't take any of that with us. What are we doing to go for the bread that lives forever? To say it another way, what are we doing to nurture that part of us that is going to help us really feel like we're living our best life? Or what are we doing to nurture that part of us which is going to lead us towards heaven? Now, for plenty of people, I'm sure there are a lot of us, myself included, I enjoy my job, I like my work. I don't think anybody goes to their job with the intention of doing the worst they possibly can, because then we would all get fired. We want to do our very best, absolutely. And at the same time, like I say, that balance is important. But when we start to notice that it's taking away from those things that really leave us feeling like we're full of life, we want to be careful. So a mentor of mine once said to me, if you're not afforded those sort of opportunities at your work or elsewhere in your life that you need to really thrive, you need to go out of your way to try and find those opportunities. So I want to say something about an interview that I had seen recently with Dave Chappelle, that comedian. He's very outspoken, incredibly controversial. Nevertheless, he says some thoughtful things and starts to generate some thought-provoking questions. But what was interesting in this interview he did with David Letterman was he was reflecting on where he's been and what he's done throughout the course of his career. And he was finding that he just wasn't feeling fulfilled. He wasn't having that peace in his heart, and he just thought that something was missing. So believe it or not, he took his family and they moved to a small town in rural Ohio. And why would he have done that? Because he had had a connection to that town. His dad lived there when he was young, and so he would visit a lot. But it was that small town community that he just needed to really feel nourished. And he needed that environment, that community element and that community aspect so that he could really feel like he was thriving. And he talked about that and reflected on that in the course of the interview. He could have been in New York. He could have been in Washington, D.C., where he also had connections. But it just wasn't leaving him feeling fulfilled. And he wasn't really believing that he could thrive there in his heart of hearts the way that he and his family could in this small town in Ohio. Boy, and that reminded me of the gospel. Why would we try to strive for that which doesn't really satisfy, for that which is passing? So I thought that was an interesting lesson from Dave Chappelle, of all people. I'm going to put this aside, even though a lot of other people in my profession might say that's the pinnacle to make it in that kind of environment. New York, DC, LA, whatever. Nope, he goes to the small rural community, and that's where he is feeling like he can be his most authentic self. I know me personally, I have noticed in the course of my life that I need a couple of things to really feel like I'm living my best. One is the opportunity to teach. I came from an environment before where I got to do a lot of lecturing and teaching and presenting. My job now doesn't always give me that chance. So the advice that I got from my mentor was to seek out opportunities to do it. One example is gospel-minded. I now do some presentations around my community here, which I love doing. Another thing that really helps me is competition. I wonder if a lot of guys, maybe some gals out there too, have this sort of drive to compete. And I hadn't had that in my life for quite a while. So my mentor said, look for some way to be competitive. So I joined a softball team. It might sound kind of dumb, and it's just a rec team. We're not going to go and become famous or anything like that. But boy, it really nourishes a part of me that I didn't even realize needed to be fed for me to really live my best life. And so this question that Jesus poses today, or that we need to reflect on today, is why are we striving for the bread that perishes? We should be going for that which is really going to fuel us forward towards eternal life. So I know what helps me live my best life and gear up for eternal life. What is that for you? My challenge for you this week is to think about what those areas are, what those areas may be that you need to nourish and satisfy for you to really feel like you're living as your best self. Hope you found this helpful. I know it's always good for me to reflect on these questions along with you. I hope you'll join me next week too, and every week as we try to be gospel-minded. So again, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Thank you for joining me today. Take care.